Hello, everyone. I am very excited to welcome our very special guest today, Maya Rossignac-Milon. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I will first introduce you, but I'm very excited for listeners to find out about an article that Maya and a friend of hers wrote for the New York Times recently about small talk, improving your small talk, what the real keys are to building relationships and connections. So you are going to learn so much today from this article. But first, Maya is an assistant professor in the Managing People in Organizations department at IESE Business School. Before joining IESE, she was a postdoctoral researcher at Columbia Business School. Her PhD is in psychology from Columbia University. Her research investigates the experience of shared reality in conversation and interpersonal relationships, all of which we talk about a lot here on All Ears English. So I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
So tell us a little bit first about the article. Most listeners won't have read it yet. We'll definitely share it. We'll give you details how to find it. But yes, what was the process in writing this? You co-wrote it with a friend, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I wrote it with my friend Erica Boothby. She's a close collaborator of mine. And we had our own experience of riffing that really started our friendship. And so it was really nice to write about that experience. We basically met at a conference, and our small talk quickly gave way to playful theories. We started riffing off of each other about what coffee drinkers are like, and tea drinkers, and if that maps onto pet preferences and all
So it
this
was one
different
of those magic moments where
stuff.
you were able to
Exactly.
start a fun conversation and quickly feel like kindred spirits, like we're going to be
Exactly.
friends. But you're using this verb riffing, which might be unfamiliar to some listeners, but I agree is so key in small talk. What does that mean, Maya, riffing?
Yeah, so riffing is really building off of what someone else is saying. So it comes from music, right? From jazz and improvisation, where artists would riff off of each other. So a jazz riff is, right, like a series of musical notes. And instead of just sort of playing something that's scripted, when jazz artists are performing together, they're really improvising and they're riffing off of each other. So they'll take something that one person played and add to it and create something totally new together. And that's really the idea of riffing in conversation, is you're creating something new together, the same way that improv artists create a new scene together when they're doing improv.
Yeah, I love this metaphor of this beautiful piece of jazz music, especially live jazz, where it becomes something amazing and it's mostly improvised. So that is an amazing metaphor for really what happens with this small talk when you first meet someone. So I'm very excited to get your 3 tips today that could help our listeners improve their small talk and have more often have it lead to a real connection, a real friendship.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm
All right.
excited.
Do you want to dive in with your first tip?
Definitely. So, my first tip is really this idea of riffing at its core. So, we often think about small talk as exchanging information about each other. So, what do you do? Where are you from? Or if you already know the person, how was your weekend? And just kind of exchanging facts back and forth. And that can often get in the way of riffing because we're not trying to create something new together, like we were just discussing. We're just kind of reciting something back and forth. And so instead, I invite your listeners to try to build on what the other person is saying, to try to create something new. And so instead of like searching for surface level commonalities, try to create something that's unique to the two of you. So if someone asks you how your weekend was, you might share something like, oh, I spent way too much time watching people on TikTok make tiny food. And the other person might say something like, okay, tiny food, like what do you mean? And you might just say, okay, well, I'm pretty sure I can I can cook a lasagna in like a tiny bottle cap. And they might say, wow, well, maybe we should try to do that together. We could organize a whole potluck with a bunch of tiny food. And of course, you're
Right?
joking.
I'm
You're
good
not
at
going
making
to.
tiny noodles, so that can be what I add. Yes.
Exactly, yeah. So it doesn't have to be something you're actually going to do, but you're just kind of riffing off of each other. You're just creating this shared reality, this little world that belongs to you. Now you have this little universe that you can explore, and you can, push into more absurd territory. It doesn't have to be funny. It could be any kind of idea that you're just really building on the other person. So that would be my first tip.
Okay, I love this so much because it's really true that when we often have those first interactions, we sometimes out of nervousness or being worried about that initial first impression, we kind of go to what we are comfortable with, just asking those regular questions and sticking in safe territory. But you are so right that often that doesn't really go anywhere. It might even be a little awkward, and you're not able to really build a connection, and suddenly you're out of time, and that's an opportunity lost. Whereas if you can quickly skip a lot of that and riff about something fun, find something in common, be playful, be funny, and really allow your real personality to show, that actually might lead to a real connection.
Yeah, totally. Like that sense of playfulness that you have with close friends. Often you already have that. And you're kind of, like you're saying, you're fast forwarding to that and treating the person as if they're
Yes.
already a good friend that you're comfortable being playful with. The way that we kind of do as children, right? Like making friends, it was a lot easier when you were, 7 years old, because you just jump right into that play together. And so it's kind of embracing that spirit of playfulness with people that you've just met.
That's a really good point. I have young kids and I observe them do this. They skip all of those niceties, all of that kind of friendly, polite small talk we feel like we are obligated to do, and they go right into being fun and funny together and our immediate friends. And you're not wrong. We could do this as adults in sort of a adjusted way that would fit the situation and create more friendships, more connections. I love that. Okay, let's move on to your second tip. I'm excited for this.
Yeah, so my second tip is really what you just said about letting your real self shine through. So being real is tip number two. So often we're so focused on trying to make a good impression that we're not going to share something that would be good riffing material to begin with, right? We're going to stick to things that we feel follow the general script of like what you're supposed to say in that context. And what my research has found is that actually deviating a little bit from that, saying something that's maybe a little more unexpected, even if it feels really vulnerable, it feels risky in the moment, that will make you come across as more authentic because you're being more authentic. Like you're letting a little bit of the real you that might not conform exactly to what is expected in that situation come through. And so that can allow you to then uncover territory with the other person that is much better fodder for riffing, right? So, and it doesn't have to be something funny. It could just be something quirky. Like you might share a hot take, like, I think rom-coms peaked in 2004, whatever it might be. And then the other person can riff off of that. Or it could even be something, more vulnerable. Like if someone asks you about your weekend and you watched a movie that made you cry, you could say, I watched a movie and it really moved me. I actually started crying. And you could tell them a little bit about that. It's not super vulnerable. You're not telling them about when you cried because of like a life event that happened. You're just telling them about this lightly vulnerable. It's a little bit less scary than diving into like the super deep stuff that you probably don't feel ready yet if you've just met this person. But you can be a little more vulnerable than you might be otherwise.
Yeah. So first of all, I think that's not a hot take. I think that's just facts that rom-coms peaked into the 90s. The hot take is that rom-coms are good now, which is very debatable.
Good point.
But yes, this is so true. And it's interesting that the quicker you show your real personality, it's actually a really great filter to sort of weed out anyone that was never going to be a good connection anyway, because either you're too different, you're not going to be able to find common ground. And that's fine. You could sort of move into the small talk and just have the quick conversation and recognize this isn't going to be a solid connection, which is okay. But then you're able to find out which people you are potentially able to have that connection with and waste a little. It's sort of like dating when you're trying to say what the other person wants to say or just be really amiable for a while, and you end up wasting so much time with people that it was never going to work out with. The sooner you can be yourself and filter that down to someone it actually would work with, the better.
Yeah, totally. You can get a sense of like, can we jump on the same wavelength?
Right. Exactly. Okay. So interesting. All right. Do you have a third tip to share with us?
Yes. So my third tip is something to do later in the conversation. Once you've already started riffing a little bit and you've created something that's unique to the two of you, then call back to it after. So a lot of the time we think that inside jokes, we kind of wait for them to just emerge naturally. And that can take a while, or we think it's something that's really reserved for close friends. But inside jokes are something you can build with a little more intention just by calling back to something earlier in the conversation. And so if we riffed earlier about rom-coms, at the end of our conversation, or maybe after, I might follow up with something about rom-coms that would make both of us laugh and remember, oh yeah, we had this great moment. We had this shared reality about this during our conversation. So that can be a nice way to then give you some kind of thread that you can carry through to the next conversation, to the next interaction that you have, to really reinforce the sense that you've created this shared reality together.
Absolutely. As a closing, I could say, all right, if you watch a rom-com tonight, make sure it's one from the 90s.
Exactly.
There's so many fun ways to call back if you show a little of your personality, be a little out there, playful, whatever it is, right? And then you have something to refer back to. I really love this thought because I think it's true that we often think we need a more solid foundation, more of a relationship before we can start being fun and funny and creating these inside jokes, but it's really not true. This can happen right away. If you run into someone at a conference, if you start showing your personality quicker, then even in a conversation of a few minutes, like happened for you and your friend, you could get there and realize like this could be a great connection for life.
Totally.
Yeah, awesome. These tips are so amazing. I'm very excited for our listeners to use these tips the next time they meet someone for the first time. Skip some of that small talk and try to show your personality, build on that to create a real connection. Maya, can you share some details about the article, about how our listeners could find it? Remind me the name of it so that everyone listening can go and read this amazing article.
Yeah, so it's a New York Times guest essay. It was published about a month ago, and it's called "You're Probably Doing Small Talk Wrong," and you can find it on the New York Times.
Awesome. Amazing. And if our listeners want to follow you or find out more about you, are you on social media? Could they follow you?
Yeah, definitely. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter.
Okay.
And they can also visit my website, MayaRossignac-Milon.com, where they can read more about the research behind the scenes.
Amazing. Okay, thank you so much for joining us, Maya, and sharing this wisdom. I love that it sprouted from this amazing connection you had with a friend that is now a longtime friend and really proved that this works. So everyone out there listening, prove it to yourselves by creating one of those connections. So fun. Thank you for being here today, Maya.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Awesome. Bye-bye.
Bye.